So, exploring the songwriting of Tom Petty. So, what we really want to accomplish today is learn a little bit about Tom. We'll listen to some of his songs, kind of analyze and talk about the analysis of the songs, learn from looking at what's happening with the songs, and then hopefully leave with ideas that you can use. And then also, with each song that we do, I'm going to kind of give you homework assignments that actually give you some steps on what you can do with what we are talking about. And if you have any questions or want to ask questions, you can put them in the chat. I'll watch for them there. And then also, you can use the reactions function and raise your hand, and then I can call on you and we can have open discussion as well. So, what did I learn from making this workshop? Well, one of the first things that I discovered was melody and rhythm are really keys to a lot of Tom's work. He really focuses on the melodic structure, the rhythm of the songs, and he really tries to make each song kind of unique and its own thing that stands out. So I noticed that in many of the songs that I listened to. He also uses a lot of rhymes that are not perfect, and we'll talk about some of the types of rhymes that he uses. And I think not using perfect rhymes gives his songs a level of authenticity or believability that he probably wouldn't get if he was using perfect rhyme. Also, I've noticed that he experiments with tempo. He has some songs that are very slow. He has some songs that are very fast and kind of everything in between. And another thing that I noticed with Tom was even the musical breaks or like solos within his songs, they're hooky and singable as well. I found myself when I was listening to the songs able to sort of sing back some of the guitar parts. There were other songs that had piano or electric piano parts, even some songs that when you listen to his songs have he's used some sitar in some songs, harmonica in some songs. I also noticed that the titles are very catchy and usually explain or express the hook of the song. So you get a lot of information just in the title of his songs. And one thing that I found about Tom's music is I don't know the words to a lot of his songs, but I still feel them. And I think that comes from his use of melody and the rhythms and having those hooks that are so catchy. So those are some of the things that I learned. We can definitely talk about what you learned kind of through this trek that we're taking as well. He also wrote a lot of songs. So he had 16 studio albums that were released, 9 video albums, and then 68 singles that were released. And, you know, that's a lot of songs just that have been released, but think about how many songs don't get released. So it tells you he was writing a ton of, you know, songs and albums and just really a creative individual, which I think is very, very cool. One of the first things before we dive into the actual songwriting itself is really talking about the arrangements from an instrumentation standpoint. And what I noticed in a lot of his songs are it's pretty basic, you know, arrangement from a perspective of what instruments are being used. And I think it's really cool because a lot of us have access to all of the same instruments that, you know, Tom would. Obviously, he's not using any magic devices or anything, but obviously drums, bass, a lot of acoustic guitar. There's a lot of electric guitar in his work. You'll also hear piano, organ, a lot of electric piano, both kind of the Wurlitzer and kind of the Rhodes pianos. And then in some of the songs, there's harmonica, there's sitar. Tom wasn't afraid to experiment with instrumentation. When you listen to songs that are not the singles or songs that are some of the album cuts, he was, you know, on his album Southern Accents, there's some songs where he's using a Lynn drum machine that almost has like a Prince kind of sound to it on some of the songs that have like acoustic guitars with kind of that electronic drum sound, and they experimented with effects and delays on some of the vocals and some of the parts. And I think what's cool about Tom is, like he just told us, he's really doing this because he wants to be creative and make music. And listening through the various albums, it was fun to hear that they're kind of pushing the technology of the time as well. And I think that's really cool. And I know that's not directly related to the songwriting, but it is related to the songs and ultimately the recordings that we consume as fans. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I also observed the band plays a huge part in Tom's art. I've noticed that his songs give the players in the band room to shine and express themselves as well. So you'll hear a lot of musical breaks with Tom. And I think it really comes from, he came up in a time where bands were more of a thing, and he played with a lot of the same people for many, many years. The Heartbreakers, were, a lot of them were still the original people even up to the time when he passed. And again, groove and melody play a huge role in Tom's work. So that's something to think about if you're looking to emulate Tom, or make very memorable and kind of timeless songs. Groove and melody are something that can really give your song a good foundation. So this interview, I think, was recorded in 2014. So it was a number of years ago, but I thought that was really cool how he talked about the bass and the drums creating a trance. And I think how I took that is like, when a song is in the pocket and when a song just has that groove going on, like it's undeniable how it can catch you. And there's many different ways that you can do that for sure. So let's now start talking about the songs themselves. So the first song is a song that I really like, and it's from 1979. It's his song called Refugee. And the thing that I wanted you to listen for in this song more than anything is Tom uses a rule, and more than likely he probably didn't even think about this, but it's something that you can think about. But his song does this, but it has the rule of two. And the rule of two is, if you do something melodic twice, don't do it again until you do something else. So you'll hear in the verses, and really every section of this song, he will do a melodic line, he'll repeat the melodic line, and then it will go to a new section and there will be a new melodic line that will repeat, and then it goes to something else after that. And then eventually the verse comes back and it does the same thing again, but you don't hear the same melody more than twice in a row. And the thing that does, and I think one of the things that you'll hear in every single Tom Petty song that we listen to, is every section has contrast to the other. You don't get bored with what's happening in the sections because there's so much that's changing. So we're not going to watch the lyrics of this song. We want to pay attention to the melody in this one. So listen to Refugee and see if you can pick out how the rule of two is being used. So did you guys hear kind of what I was talking about, how it's like there's a melody line, it happens again, and then it changes, and it changes each section. And also what we talked about before too, from a groove perspective, I mean, that song was definitely a groove throughout the whole thing and had that sort of riff that was going on. And I don't understand half of the words of the song. Like, I pick up bits and pieces, and I've loved that song ever since I was a kid. But, until I actually read some of the lyrics, I had no idea that it even said that, but I still like the song. And I think that's where the importance of having a clear hook and also having that clear melodic structure makes a difference as well. Any other observations that any of you had while listening to that song? Paul Beckerman?
Yeah, he did a nice job playing dynamics to keep it interesting, because that groove did kind of go through, but then on some of those verses, he brought it way down to emphasize the vocals more, and the little fills at the end of the spoken lines.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's very important as you're doing your own music too, is give your listener contrast and give those dynamics so they don't get bored. There's a documentary called "Damn the Torpedoes," which is the same as the song or the album that that song is on. And I wanted to play a portion of it for you since we were talking directly about Refugee. This is actually talking about how they actually wrote this song, which I think is really, really interesting. I thought that was a pretty cool, it just started with jamming and said it took him 10 minutes. So you never know when your little goofing around might turn into a giant massive hit. So that's the advice there. Pierre.
I just have to comment. The thing I think the appeal too, probably for everyone here on this call, Tom Petty's so damn cool. Like, you can listen to that guy talking, like I said, the 10-minute thing, but that's, like I was, very fortunate. I saw him twice live and just this whole thing about him. But then, you add all his catalog of songs, but I just had to say that because it's just, you hear him just way he's talking. It's like, yeah, I'm just doing my best, man. And just, you know what I mean? It's such a refreshing, down to earth guy, and his songs reflect that. I think, that's all. I just have to
Yeah, no, I mean it's true. He actually reminds me of people my parents hung out with when I was growing up, like heavy pot smokers, just kind of like totally chill. Yeah, we all should like strive to be more like Tom Petty for sure. Um, so going back to let me get my slides back here and we'll dive into some more songs. So the next song that we're going to talk about is one that wasn't too far behind Refugee, which is The Waiting, which is a great song that Tom had done as well. And what I wanted to kind of point out on this song, first off, is the song structure that is very similar to what any of us would do. Also, it's very similar to what's happening just still in music. Maybe there's not solos, maybe there's not bridges, but it's intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus. There's a little musical turnaround. Then it does another verse, a pre-chorus, and a chorus. There's a little turnaround, and then it goes to a bridge, a solo, and then it goes to a pre-chorus, and then kind of ad-libs the chorus out. So I see a lot of people writing songs that have, sometimes 3, 4, 5 verses. A lot of times you don't need that many verses to have an effective song. And I think this is proof that a really good song can have 2 verses and other sections that kind of support that. So let's listen to The Waiting. And off to the side here, so this song is about 120 beats per minute. It's actually in a mode. So it's in the G Lydian mode, which is the 4th degree of the D major scale or the D major key signature. And the main chords, it does vary in certain sections, but the main chords go from G to D to A to D to G to D, and then there's an A sus4 chord that's in there as well. So maybe see if you can listen to hear where the chords are changing and then also kind of that Lydian sound. So for those of you who are more familiar with modes, your major mode in your key is the Ionian mode. And that's a really bright, stable mode, but a mode that's actually brighter and gives a little bit more color than the Ionian mode is the Lydian mode. So this song has a really bright kind of feel to it that sounds a little bit different than if it would have been in G major. So try to listen to the mode, but then also pay attention to some of the song structure as well. So this is The Waiting. So such a great song. I saw some of you when that pre-chorus, the yeah yeah part came around again after the solo. I saw some of you like nodding your heads. And what I think is really important with contrast is when you take your listener away from something that they've heard before and then you bring them back to it, it feels like coming home. And that's what I think you experience is like, I already know this part, so I can kind of like really feel it again. And I think you have to give them the absence of that before you give it back to them to make it more powerful. But what would you say the hook of this song is? Like, what is the main idea that the song is communicating? And you can put it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand or just unmute yourself, we can talk about it as well. But as you listen to that song, what is the hook, or what is the the main idea behind it. Yep.
Oh, can I say the lines that catches me the most is I don't know where it's in the chorus. You take it on faith, you take it to the heart. To me, that out of the whole song, those just jump right out and grab me the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Carmony in the chat says waiting is hard. I think, the waiting part is like you have faith, you kind of have to take it in the heart. I think it's really about a relationship where you kind of don't know where it's going and you just kind of have to ride it out. And, it says every day you get one more card. You kind of figure things out every day. Every day you get one more yard, you get further down the line, but it's the waiting that is the hardest part, which obviously is the title is the waiting, but really that hook is the waiting is the hardest part. And I think it sets it up so well with everything else. One of the things to pay attention in this song too is that the melodic phrases within the verse, you have kind of the first line sets up a motif. The second line is different than the first, but then the third line comes back to something that's similar to the first line, but there's a little bit of variation to it. But then the last three lines change again. So kind of the rule of two happening here as well, where you've got this line, you've got something else, this line again, and then it goes to something else. And it's just an interesting pattern to see how this is changing. And after it does these two lines, he varies it again. So it does add that contrast or the rule of two. And when you look at the rhyme scheme of the verses, the lines end in now, dream, this, again, pretend, this. And it's kind of an XXA, BBA, which is very, very similar to each other. And the types of rhymes that he's using, again and pretend, are an additive rhyme because you're adding the D sound to the N. So it's again, and then it's pretend. So you're adding the D sound. So that would be an additive rhyme. And then the sections here, the third and the sixth line, have the word this. Words don't rhyme with themselves. That's called an identification, or it's called an identity. So what's interesting about this song is the A is actually an identification, where those lines are ending in this. Just something that I thought was pretty cool. The pre-chorus is the yas. And it's kind of a call and response, because you'd hear him say, yeah, yeah, and then the band goes, yeah, yeah, and then he comes back. So call and response is something that you can use in your songs. And then yas, ohs, oohs, or other vowel sounds that are in songs that are not lyrics, but they're still sung. Those are known as vocables, which is kind of a cool word. So sometimes if you can't think of lyrics, maybe try just adding some ohs or ahs or oohs or something in there, because that might be, that might add to the song as well. And then the chorus, first looking at the rhymes, you have part and yard or card. So that is an assonance rhyme because it is the vowel sound is the same, and then the consonants on the end are different. So part and yard are an assonance rhyme. And then he ends the section with a perfect rhyme, heart and part. And perfect rhymes are like major chords, so they resolve. So it's interesting that he resolved his section with perfect rhyme and had a less perfect rhyme in the first part of the section. And for those of you who have been attending my recent workshops, we've been doing writing where we use the chorus templates, where we have like a title line and then we have other lines that are not the title. This is one of those bookend chorus sections where it has a title line, there's three lines that don't have the title, and then the title is in the last line as well. And Pat Pattison would say that the spotlight shines the most on your first line and your last line of your chorus. So that's why the hook is effective there. So your homework and kind of your assignment to take from this workshop to kind of give yourself something to work on, is write a chorus using the same structure. So bookend it, with a title line, have some lines in the middle, and then have another title line, and try writing your chorus with the same rhyme scheme, the AAXAA rhymes. And maybe even try using the same chord progression, which is the G, D, A, D, G, D, A, which is a 4-1-5-1-4-1-5, if you're using the Nashville number system. So any questions or thoughts on the weighting?
Chad, I had my hand up there.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see it. Sorry.
It's okay. I think it's interesting that you talked about the identity or the identification. What I have found is that you get into groups of writers that are kind of where we are in our development in many cases, and they almost see that as a weakness and not necessarily as a strength. To and almost like you couldn't come up with anything else to say, so you just use the same word over again, kind of a thing,
Well, now you can say Tom Petty did it. So,
Right.
But no, I think where that comes from, Doug, is the more natural conversational you can make your lyrics sing, the more believable your song is. And I think sometimes people force rhymes, and it forces any meaning out of it because people focus more on the rhyme than they do what's being said. So, sometimes you just have to use what makes sense. And I think Tom probably was just saying what he wanted to say, So, yeah.
Yep.
Ron, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just noticing in the chorus, you've got 5 lines, and Pat Pattison would say, well, that's a very unstable chorus. But yet when I listened to it, it sounded very stable. And I thought that was kind of strange.
So that's great that you bring that up, because Pat Pattison would also tell you that if you're adding that extra line, that adds an extra spotlight. And what's on that extra line? The hook. So when you have that extra 5th line, it actually shines a spotlight back on that title and back on that hook. So it's actually and what's happening in this chorus is you have the AA rhyme scheme, and then there's a line that doesn't rhyme, but your mind, since it had heard that pattern of line and then the next line's going to rhyme, you're almost expecting the next line after that, take it on faith, to rhyme with faith, right? But it doesn't. So it kind of throws off that stability. But if you think about it, Ron, too, waiting means that it takes extra time. Adding that extra line makes the chorus have extra time. So it's actually prosody with the topic. Yep. Yeah. And I didn't think about that before, but that's that's where, that's brilliant. It's brilliant that it was done that way. Awesome. Great discussion. Great feedback. It started with just him playing that guitar thing and then living with it for a while. I mean, I don't know how many of you do that sometimes, but it's like you have a nugget of a song, but you don't have the song quite yet. So sometimes it's good to keep those. So the next song that we're going to cover is Don't Come Around Here No More, which for the grammar police, they would attack this title right away. But this song is really interesting because it's so different than what a lot of his other stuff was. And he actually wrote this with Dave Stewart of the Eurythmics, which once you know that, it sort of makes a little bit more sense of how it came to be. But this song is really interesting from a perspective of just how it's structured and where certain things happen in the song. So it feels almost like it's a verse refrain song because it has the title in the verses. And to me, it almost feels like the chord progression feels like a chorus and a pre-chorus that kind of bounce back and forth, but yet you still kind of have a verse, you still kind of have a pre-chorus, then you have definitely a chorus part. And the title literally is what the song is about. Don't come around here no more. That's what the song is about. So let's see if you pick up on any other observations with this one. But this is just a really great song too. Tempo wise, it's 81 beats per minute. It's in the key of F major, and the chord progression is really a 1 4 5 suspended 4 chord progression for most of the song, which is very simple, but they did a great work with the production and the instrumentation. So this is Don't Come Around Here No More. So isn't that's a song that has a ton of repetition, but for me, I don't get too bored with it. I don't know about you guys, but what observations do you have about that song? I think if one of us brought that to a song review meeting, I think we would get ripped apart for just saying the same thing over and over again.
Chad, this is Doug.
Yeah.
I would say that, I posted in the chat. I said it's probably my favorite Petty song, and it's just because of the reason that you talked about with it was the influence of Stewart in there. Because I'm a huge Eurythmics fan. I've always been. Annie
Yeah.
Lennox is just unbelievable. So I mean, I guess it has really that pop, more of a pop feel to it, and but I really enjoyed that song a lot. The thing is, the reason it's there is because it goes back to what he talked about, the groove. The groove is so tight there, and it just moves. You can't stay still when you're listening to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jay, you have your hand raised as well.
Hey Chad, thank you. Well, so I get the sense that the narrator, the singer, is to serve as a protagonist in a story where he feels that he's kind of being strung along and dealing with the same type of shenanigans from a person, I guess, the antagonist in the story. And so to me, it makes sense that there would be a lot of repetition and a lot of elements that kind of come back to an anchor because it feels like to me it's grinding on him. And it's like when he comes to like the part where he said, "Who do you expect to meet walking down the street?" It's like I'm not the same guy anymore. I've grown up. I've moved on, and you're still coming back with the same old same. So don't come around here anymore. And so
Yeah.
I felt a lot of elements of the song really kept hitting toward the element of that sense or that idea set.
Yeah. Awesome awesome observations, Jay. Nice. Paul.
A couple things that I noticed, it is kind of repetitive, but they break it up with like those hays, the kind of that group hay kind of a thing. And I can totally see that playing in concert. If you write a song thinking to perform it and how you can get audience participation out of that. And then at the end, I love the one note solo for like 16 measures. It's like one note, da 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 da, until the wah pedal comes in and they kind of bring it up. It's like, don't come around here no more with that one note solo. And then he kind of goes into that big wah solo at the end. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool song for sure. Mark.
Yeah, I was thinking that one reason, just the basic 1 4 5 progression repeated, but he's got so much going on over it, so much variation, with the woman singing in the background or whomever. There's just a whole lot of stuff going on that kind of almost masks the 1 4 5 progression.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, and I was thinking about this as we were listening, technically it sounds like it's in F major because it's going, 1 for the 5 suspended 4, but the fact that the sus4 chord is in there, technically you can't really tell what key it's in because this could be F Lydian or F Mixolydian as well, because you could be in the key of B flat. And all of those chords would be working too. So then it would be a 5 1 2 suspended 4 1 progression. So having that sus chord gives it a floating feel because we don't really know what the tonic is necessarily. So we could be in F major, we could be in B flat. So it gives it that sort of ethereal quality to it as well. Pierre.
Yeah, I also like the element of that female vocal, the wailing. It kind of brings in the other character because he's more or less telling, "Don't come around here." She's wailing, very reminiscent to me. "Give Me Shelter" by the Stones. You know, just that.
Yeah.
She's just wailing, and it really adds so much to the song. Yeah.
The one female vocalist in the back is Stevie Nicks, actually,
Hmm.
on this song.
Yeah, you can tell.
Because I think they wrote this after one of their concerts or something, and I think maybe Tom and her might have had an affair, or maybe her and Dave somebody was sleeping with Stevie, and this song kind of came out of that too.
Yeah.
Doug, you had your hand raised again.
So yeah, I sit there and I'm listening to what you're talking about with the chord progression and all that. But I got to be really honest with you. He probably didn't sit down and say, "I'm going to write a song with F B flat, C suspended, fourth B flat." He just started playing, and he liked what he heard, you know. And that's what's so cool about it, you know, because it's a natural. He wasn't thinking about it, but he's following a lot of rules, but in a very natural way.
Exactly. And what Pat Pattison would say to that is, it's not about the intention of the writer, it's about how can we use that in our writing, right? So maybe try doing this progression in one of your songs and see, just changing one note in a chord, changing that C chord from a C major to a sus4 chord could totally change the entire feel or idea that you have of the song. So yeah, definitely. So let's keep going. So what's interesting too with this song is the verse and the chorus, they have 2 chords per measure where it's changing every couple of beats, but the pre-chorus actually only has 1 chord per measure. So there's actually harmonic contrast between the sections by the amount of times that they're changing the chords. And one of the things that when I was looking at it, in the verse and the chorus, you had the 1-4-5-4, which if we're in F, that would be Ionian. But the pre-chorus, if we're still in F, goes to the C, to an A minor, back to the C, to a G minor. So it actually is then in a different mode. So your pre-chorus is creating modal contrast from the verse and the chorus by changing modes. So that's something that keeps us interested in the song as well. So changing the mode section to section keeps the listener engaged as well. One of the other things too, notice the rhyme scheme, how that kind of contrasts as well. So you have more, for, more, everything rhymes. But then when you get to the pre-chorus, it's I've given up, stop, given up, stop. Up and stop are actually a consonant rhyme because the P sound rhymes, but the vowel doesn't. So you go from perfect rhymes to consonant rhymes, and then there's longer and stronger, which is a perfect rhyme. But then when you go back to the chorus, you're back to repetition, and you have that identity happening with it again. So again, using different rhyme schemes and different types of rhymes between sections is something that you can do in your songs as well. So your homework for this song is try to write a song that includes your title in the verse, and then in your chorus, repeat just the title, just like this song did, and then make a contrasting pre-chorus section and try to use the rhythm of your title as a melodic motif. And then try changing the chords every measure in your pre-chorus, and then have 2 chords per measure in your verse and chorus. So try to add that contrast in there. So that might give you a project to try when you're sitting down to do your next song. So we mentioned prosody before, and prosody is when the structure and the musical aspects of a song match or create unity with the lyrical content. So prosody is where what you're saying jives with how you're saying it and sort of is the film score of what you're saying within your song. So the next song that we're going to talk about is really, for me, when I listened to it, it instantly screamed great examples of prosody. And I think you'll see what I'm talking about as well. So the song that we're going to talk about is Into the Great Wide Open, which is fast forwarding now into the 90s. We've been a little bit earlier within Tom's career, but this song, this is an interesting song as well. So besides the prosody, he's again changing modes within the key signature. So the verses are in the Aeolian mode, or the E minor mode, which is the relative minor of the G major scale. And the verses are in E minor, and then it changes to G major in the chorus. So again, creating contrast between the sections modally, but then we'll also look at how it's creating contrast even from a content perspective as well. So this is Into the Great Wide Open. So from a prosody perspective, changing from that minor sound in the verses to the major chord and hitting that root, the tonic chord, the G, as the first chord in that chorus really fits with the great wide open feel, right? And then the way it's sung is Into the Great Wide Open. Then the music kind of carries for a minute. And in my mind, I just feel like someone's spreading their arms and saying, like, look at the open, you know? And even in the verse where he says the future was wide open, he sings wide longer, which creates prosody with what the word is saying and how he's singing it. And I think that's brilliant. And notice the rhyme schemes within this too. So you have school and tattoo, which is a subtractive rhyme, but then you have tattoo two, which adds the second two sound on the end. So you have a subtractive and then you have an additive. And when you go to the second part of this, afford and door is subtractive, and then you add the chord sound. So it goes from subtractive to additive again. So the rhymes are actually doing the same thing in each part of the verse, which is totally cool. And it's a X, B X, or open and limit, depending on how you sing it, could be a rhyme too, because you have the sound, limit. So that could be a assonance rhyme as well. But listen to, again, this line and the sky was the limit, to hear how the prosody comes in from the way that it's performed. So you hear how wide and sky, he sings those words out. So that's a great example of prosody. And then when it gets to the chorus again, when it says Into the Great Wide Open, it's almost like it opens up because of what the chords are doing and the space that he's giving it. And it's brilliant. What I like about this is it's saying out in the great wide open, and then the last line is a rebel without a clue. You hear the chords and the melody kind of droop back down. So it's almost like there's all this opportunity out there, but you still have this person that's just kind of lost. And I think the music pulls us back to that when we get to the verses. The other thing that this song is doing is something that is really effective, is it does showing before telling. And if you notice these more tannish golden kind of lines, these are all showing lines because they're showing you things that you can see or experience through your senses. So Eddie waited till he finished high school. He went to Hollywood, got a tattoo. He met a girl out there with a tattoo too. That doesn't carry any sort of emotional impact, right? That's just, those are declarative sentences. But when the line comes in that tells us why that matters, it says the future was wide open. Now, all of a sudden, we have context to why all of those other details matter. And it does it exactly the same way in the second half of the verse too, where it says they moved into a place they both could afford. He found a nightclub he could work at the door. She had a guitar and she taught him some chords. If it stopped there, we'd be like, so? But he says the sky was the limit. Now all of a sudden, that all makes sense. Do you guys sense that when you read it like that? You need that showing before telling to get us into the picture. And I think this is a perfect example of showing before telling. Because if you just said the future was wide open, the sky was the limit, that doesn't have the same impact without setting it up before with those details. So I thought that was really cool too. And I know we've talked about that in other workshops. Doug, you had your hand raised.
Yep. So my question is, do you think he ruminated a bit on the third line when he met a girl out there with a tattoo too? Wondering about, how does that really sound? And you heard him when he sang it. He also had a little trouble getting all the syllables in. But again, it worked. It was it worked for the song. But I could see that those purists would look at that and say, "What in the heck?"
But I think what it proves actually is that he had the melody first.
Yep.
Because I think without the two, the melody is different than like the third line and the second part, right?
Yep.
So the melody is the same as she had a guitar, which is an interesting way to say guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And she taught him some chords. A tattoo too, that's the same rhythm. So I think he had the melody first.
Yep.
And then he made the lines. But the tattoo too is an alliteration, which I think is really cool too. Tattoo two. Chris, you had your hand raised as well.
Yeah, just I had a thought on that particular point. I mean, I never really understood this song until you've gone through it tonight. But I mean, everything is descending in the song. Every chord in the verse is descending throughout the entire song, and it's just this guy following what he thinks is a free rock and roll life, but he's actually following a very conventional path. And I think finding a girl with a tattoo too, he's finding somebody just like himself, and he's finding somebody that fits into this dream of being a rock star. And so that everything he's doing is it's going down and down, and the only time it goes up is during the chorus, which is kind of the dream of what this could be. But I mean, the whole song has definitely you don't think it's going to have a happy ending when the A&R man can't find a single when he finally gets his album. So
Yeah.
I think that the whole thing is kind of undercuts this whole idea of or reinforces the idea that just kind of uncreatively following the path, even to be a rock star, can be just as conventional as anything else, and doesn't have anything to do with the real freedom that there could be in music. And it really seems like a much greater song even than I thought that it was before.
Yeah, I mean, totally, and I think that's what's really cool about it is it kind of sets the tone of like it's almost like the parts of his life are very, like you had said, they're very traditional. They're kind of almost mundane, but then he's got all these dreams that's where the wide open thing comes from. And then we kind of feel that, but then at the same time, it's like, he still doesn't have a clue. Right?
Yeah, he's still clueless.
Yeah. And what's cool about this song too, is it's written in third person, right? Like Tom was a storyteller in this song. You know what I mean? And I think that's really cool with this one as well. Greg says, ever since this song, every roadie's default name is Bart. Yes. Ron says it sounds like or it has a Beatles feel to it. Definitely some parts do sound like the Beatles. Mark, you had your hand raised as well.
Do the other verses follow the same rhyme scheme of school A, X?
I think I think they do. Whoops. So yeah, it did have the same progression or rhyme scheme.
Can I add one more thing? Whoever commented about how it sounds like the Beatles, and it I think it's what stands out to me the most is that descending bass line. The Beatles use that in tons of songs, and a lot of other people use it too. But whenever I hear that progression, that's first thing I think of is the Beatles. So the end.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. Doug says, did anyone else hear the brief musical quote from Free Fallin'? I wonder which song came first. I think this was probably around that same time period, Doug. I don't know exactly when that song came out.
Yeah, it's real brief, but you can hear that the chord progression just is there, and it's kind of. I noticed it right away, and I said that's kind of cool that that he was experimenting around with that, liked it so much he turned it into a one way or the other, a different song.
Absolutely. And we already talked about rhyme scheme, but to add contrast between the sections, we have that AAAX, BBBX, and then when you get to the chorus, it's basically AB. So it's different between the sections. And then from the chorus like template perspective, it's title line, other line, title line, other line. So that's an interesting observation as well. So really your homework for this one would be to write a song with a minor progression in the verse and then change it to the relative major in the chorus and have that be your topic. So try to make that like the prosody within the song. Also try to use the same chorus structure where it goes title line, what Jimmy Kachulis would call a swing line, title line, swing line. And make sure that you contrast the verse and the chorus, the rhyme schemes as well. So there's a lot of things that you can learn from just this one song. It's a good example song. So when you're sitting and you're like, what did Chad say about prosody? Pull up this song and then remind yourself about that. The next song we're going to listen to is Taking It Back Again, which I think this is a really cool song. Don't Do Me Like That. Again, another title that basically just kind of says what the song is about, which I think is great. I think a lot of Tom's titles are very direct and the hook lives in the title. So my observations of this one, the verse has really fast rhythmic delivery. But then when you get to the chorus, to add contrast to that, there's more space between the phrases. So listen to how the phrases are very rhythmic, very close together in the verse, and then adding space in the chorus is how that contrast comes into play. And that's something that a lot of writers I don't think about is how do you use the parts of the song where you're not singing anything? So how do you use your rest space? The chorus in this one is kind of like stacked. So it goes title, title, swing line, title, 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 swing line, title. And every section again has its own rhythmic motif and it contrasts to the other sections. And one thing I noticed too, obviously, Don't Do Me Like That, is the title or the hook is actually a command, which is one of the variations on what hooks can be. Hooks are usually a declaration, a question, a command, or a desire, which is one way to remember. There's a whole other workshop about that on athomesongwriting.com. So this is Don't Do Me Like That, and this video actually has the chords with it as well. So listen again to the rhythmic contrast. Simple lyrics. Basically, I think what carries this one is the rhythm and it's just that type of song, which is great. So Greg, you have your hand raised.
I do. So I just wanted to say that particular song is one that Mudcrutch used to do in Gainesville.
Cool.
So that was that was really an early song of Tom Petty's.
Awesome. Yeah, that one's going back a ways.
Yeah.
Very cool. The next song that we're going to listen to is, I didn't really analyze it for me. I wanted you guys to kind of listen to it and see what you hear within this song. So this is a newer song. It's called Wreck Me. So take a listen and, what kind of lyrical observations do you have? What are you hearing happening in the melody? And are you hearing anything that's happening in the harmony or the chords? And what about the topic and the content and also the hook as well? So this is your chance to kind of review a Tom Petty song and kind of see what you might be picking up on. So this is You Wreck Me.
Yeah, what I noticed right away in the verses, each line is made up of a short, two short phrases. Da 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 da, and then the chorus or Yeah, the chorus is one longer phrase per line. So I think I, yeah, I like that.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's a great way to create contrast as well, is the lengths of your phrases for sure. Yeah.
I think one of the guys who you had from Nashville recently, Shane somebody.
Shane Adams. Yep.
He made a comment or an observation that people listen to and pay attention to phrases more, short phrases rather than longer lines of whatever else.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, is it true that this was originally titled "You Rock Me," and they changed it up because he kind of figured, it's got kind of cliche. I think is that,
I don't know. Actually, I didn't really research it. I just pulled up the song and I thought it sounded cool. But
could someone maybe confirm that? Yeah, because I heard it in an interview somewhere, I believe, down the line, and it kind of was changed, and the rest is history for me. I know I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like, just listen to it back. I mean, rock would work, right? But it would change the meaning of it. Like, I think wreck actually is more of it creates a different image. You know what I mean? And I think Pat Pattison always says that verbs, using different verbs like wreck or rock, or like changing out verbs, can sometimes be where the power lives. Sometimes when we try to write more descriptively, we try to add adjectives and things, but actually your verbs carry more power sometimes. So yeah. Mark.
Yeah, I had heard that same interview on online or something, where they had pre-recorded the whole song and they were still working on the lyrics, and the rock was just kind of and then it just came to him in a burst of inspiration, and he called his musical partner and said, instead of rock me, wreck me, and here we are. So
cool. Yeah, rock would have been much more cliche. I mean, I think it still would have worked, but probably not as well as wreck. So that's awesome. Greg says it was a fun song to play with the band. Capo won for him. Cool. So obviously we went through quite a different topics and we talked about different things, but can you see yourself using some of the things that we talked about in your own writing, or kind of what do you feel like you leave here tonight? Like, what do you feel that you got the most out of this workshop? Pierre?
I think it would be just to be natural, this way in those interviews that you showed with Tom Petty, just kind of like, don't sometimes overthink it and go from your gut. And I think a lot of times, and then, or sit on that one riff, let's say, or that chord progression for a long time, and something's going to come, right? So it's just, don't push it. And you've said that too in different workshops, like just, don't overthink, don't overanalyze, and let it'll come. But just, just be natural, be authentic.
Yeah. And obviously we've all listened to music our whole lives, right? So we all have taste, and sort of subconsciously we know what's good. So you do have to trust your gut a lot of times, but it's fun to push yourself and do things that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. And I think analyzing other people's music is a great way to do that. Doug says, strive for excellence and not perfection. It'll all come together. That's great. Yeah. Just do the best that you can. And like Tom had said in some of those interviews, he's like, I'm just trying really hard. And if you listen to some of his albums, some of his songs aren't as good as some of the ones that we listened to tonight. Like, we were listening to hits, right? Like, go and listen to the Tom Petty songs that are on there, like some of the older album tracks and stuff, and you can see how he developed as a songwriter and an artist over time. And I think all of us do that. We're all a little bit better than we were, hopefully. If you're not improving, then you're doing something wrong. But yeah. Mark, you had something else?
Yeah, I'm just kind of speculating there that, he comes up with this riffs, and like he did for the one song where he just played it over and over for a week or so until finally something came to him, a lyrical catch, hook came to him. And I'm guessing, I know just from my own personal experience, you get that one thing and then you just work the hell out of it, and then something comes along, whether it be that same sitting or that session or a week or a month later. So it really helps to work and massage that initial idea, and because you can and sometimes overthink it, you come up with something more special.
For sure. Yeah. And don't be afraid to change it. The rock me, wreck me thing is a perfect example. So, Jay.
I have a tendency to write typically lyrics first. That's just where I'm usually drawn, and then going after tones for melodies or chord progressions. But this is a great reminder for me in this workshop, and I'm definitely saving the YouTube when you when you launch it. That maybe I need to spend some time just taking simple ideas of a message and looping it. Because while of course he's not using loops, he's using, I would say, a customized loop version. He does loop, quote unquote, a lot. And so de-anchoring myself from just going through the whole process of a writing of a piece into just more free, hey, here's the message. This is what I feel right now. Let me just sit in this. Let me just loop this and get as much as I can out of it. And it's a great reminder that someone like him, if he can do it, I need to pull away from whatever I'm doing. And I won't say live there, but visit it.
Yeah.
Vacation there.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome, Jay. I think you're right. I think he had a band that's kind of his loop, but he was just playing his guitar, playing the same riff over and over again, kind of like a loop, where to me, he sounds like he's very much music first, right? And I think you hear that in the power of the melodies. And I think for me, when I start with a melody, or if I start with a groove, I think my songs end up stronger in the end. So for some people who start with lyrics, it might be good to push yourself to try starting with the music first. Paul Beckerman.
I really think that the thing that he said earlier on is that the music is what drives him, and he's just looking for that song. Everything serves the song. He doesn't have songs with like super flashy solos or anything like that. It's like everything just kind of comes together to meet the needs of the song. What does that song need? And it comes together in lots of ways. He said the first time he wrote the Refugee in 10 minutes, and the other one he sat on the hook for 2 weeks. But it's in service of the song, and that really stuck with me.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Greg.
I was just going to comment on how we started with the melody, and I don't know what other people do. Probably the same thing that I do is I sit down with the guitar and come up with a pattern and just record it on an iPhone, and I probably have 50 of those now. And then if I think about an idea for a song, I go back and listen to all those and see if any of them seem to fit the idea. And, doesn't always work, but it's a thing I do.
That's cool. That's really good advice. Yeah. So what you're saying is you have all these like riffs or guitar or chord progressions, and then you're like,
yeah.
Then you go back and kind of match the lyric with the feel of the music, kind of.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. Doug.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting idea there, Greg, because it's one of the things I was thinking about. I write a lot of instrumental music, and one of the things that I do is I write in sections. I'll have would typically be a verse in a song and a chorus in a song and so forth. But there's sections in these instrumental pieces. But what you do is, at least what I do, is each time you revisit a section, you give it something else. You give it a little bit a different flavor and add a little something to it. And I think that songwriting is similar. Your first time around in the verse, you expressed a thought and a feeling. The second time around in the verse, you're going to build on that in some way, but it's still the same general idea, but you're approaching it from a little bit different angle. And that's what that's what I really like about songwriting in general, and these analyses that you're doing really brings a lot of that home, because sometimes we don't take the time to think about what's going on, and so it's good to really kind of dive in. So this was really good. I thought this was an excellent one, Chad.
Oh, thanks, Doug. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Chris.
Yeah, I thought this was really great too. What struck me was that these are all great songs, and he had so many different approaches to the song. Like "Don't Come Around Here No More" was repetitive and a command, and then "Into the Great Wide Open" was a story song. And I'm not sure what "Wreck Me" is. It's kind of like a collage of a relationship. I don't know what the story of that song is. It's just like I think it was Pierre or somebody said that Tom Petty was cool. That song seems to be just like a collection of cool phrases about a relationship. But I don't know. I mean, it's clear that the song's expressing love, that she wrecks him, and that's a good thing. But I don't know the story to the song or exactly where they're at in their relationship, other than they're sort of making their way. But just for me, they were great, really great songs, and each one had a kind of a different approach, really.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to go back and look at "Wreck Me" because I'm wondering because there's the one verse that's later in the song where he says, "I'll be the boy in the corduroy pants, and you'll be the girl at the like
High school dance.
And it's like, okay, well, in that situation, that girl is wrecking that guy. So is the rest of it makes me wonder if the rest of the song is like a metaphor for being wrecked. Do you know what I mean?
Know,
Like
the feel of the lyrics that I got was that it was positive. That it was like I looked at it, was like they were. It was kind of like, well, I don't know what the right word is, but like a collage of incidents. Like one is at the beginning, they're driving out, they're driving somewhere, and if he gets in trouble, she's going to save him. And then at another point, it'll be as charming as where he's the geeky kid in the corduroy pants, and she's like the queen of the dance or what. I mean, I assume she's the girl at the dance. I assume that means that people want to dance with her.
Right.
So I thought they were all kind of just little mini portraits of how he viewed their relationship in a way.
Yeah. So I'll read the lyrics. So the first verse is, "Tonight we ride, right or wrong. Tonight we sail on a radio song. Rescue me should I go down if I stay too long in Trouble Town. Oh yeah, you wreck me, baby. You break me in two, but you move me, honey. Yes, you do. Now and again, I get the feeling, well, if I don't win, I'm going to break even. Rescue me should I go wrong. If I dig too deep, if I stay too long. Oh yeah, you wreck me, baby. You break me in two, but you move me, honey. Yes, you do. I'll be the boy in the corduroy pants. You be the girl at the high school dance. Run with me wherever I go and just play dumb, whatever you know. Oh yeah, you wreck me, baby. You break me in two, but you move me, honey. Yes, you do." And then it repeats that again. So yeah, it isn't as consistent of a story as like what some other songs are, but it still makes sense.
Yeah.
In a way.
It's like an album. I mean, it's like a picture album of the relationship.
Yeah,
yeah, it was great.
It's like he's up to something and she's along with him, and stay with me on this thing. Don't let me get too deep, get too far into it. And hearkening back to the dance and how they met, maybe. I don't know.
But there's an interesting play on it too, because it says rescue me.
Yeah.
But yet it says you
wrong.
wreck me. Yeah. Which is interesting. So
I think the wreck is positive.
Right.
That's a positive thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else?
Well, yeah, I was just going to make the comment that I mean, how do we know what was going on in his life at any given time, right? And the thing is, he's got this 40-year relationship with Stevie Nicks, and some of these songs might have something to do with that unrequited relationship, So who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody, tagging along for this workshop. I thought it was fun to look at Tom Petty, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys. Awesome. Well, everybody stay safe, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yep.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.